Thank you. Thanks, everyone. This is the webinar, Getting Your Classroom Ready for the New School Year for Your Students with Autism. I'm Buti. I've been in the field of special ed for 24 years. I was a special ed teacher. Then I was the administrator over autism for intellectual disabilities and autism for Chicago Public Schools. Currently, I'm a private autism educational consultant, an international presenter, and the director of day programs at Newman Family Services. Now let's find out a little bit about who you guys are so I know who I'm speaking with. You'll see on your screen there is a little survey. If you can go in and click who you are, it'll give us a better idea. And I'll just wait a couple of minutes. I can see we already have 40 people responded, so I'll just wait a little bit longer. Great, all kinds of teachers. Excellent. Speech paths, OTPTs, administrators. Going to wait a little bit longer. We have 64 responding out of 82. Everyone can go in and click. That would be great. We're almost there. We have 70 out of our 82. Need about 20 more seconds. I know you guys can all see the results. We see we mostly have special ed teachers, speech paths, OTPTs, some family members, some administrators, assistive technology, some others. All right, so we got about 72. We're almost there. So we'll go ahead and move on. But now I have an idea of, who you guys are, so that always helps. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next. So of course today we want to hope that you increase your knowledge of the essential items that you need prior to your beginning of the school year if you're teaching children with autism. Some ideas about setting up your classroom for students with autism, and the essentials of visual strategies when you're teaching children with autism. So I always like to look at this supply list, if you will. These are some essentials that I always recommend you have prior to starting your classroom. To have bins for organization, even Ziploc baggies to store things in. Plenty of Velcro and laminating, essential. Clipboards for your data sheets. Binders could be for data, student work, student schedules. The clear book tape could be an easy way to laminate and to post things up. Dividers, multiple room dividers, we'll talk about that, and multiple shelves, we'll talk about that. File folders, timers throughout your room, and then the use of visuals, which are, in this case I'm discussing pictures, which you can use BoardMaker, Google Images, drawings, photographs, etc. And some good masking tape and colored tape, which will go into all the reasons why. Okay, so that's my kind of like must-haves to get started. All right, so important things that are prior to your first day. You want to make sure you have all the IEPs of the students that you're going to have in your class for this year. You want to make sure you review them thoroughly, and if there's any way possible to collaborate with the instructor or the team that had the students the year prior to get in essential information. Definitely you want to create your data sheets to correlate with all IEP goals and any behavioral goals as well from the behavior plan. So you're going to put these on your data sheets put them on a clipboard, and locate them where the data will be taken. So if it's data for social interaction out on recess, you put that data clipboard by the door where you would be leaving to go out to recess. If it's data for one-on-one group time, you're going to keep it there at the area where you're going to do one-on-one group sessions. And so forth and so on. You want to determine groupings of your students too. So when you're reviewing your IEPs, you really want to look at what students might fit well together for what subjects. Because typically in a classroom of all children with autism, you're going to have multiple grade levels. But you're also going to have students that are at a grade level but are functioning at different levels. So you really want to look at how to group all of your students for group activities, large group activities, small group activities, and of course, one-on-one sessions as well. Then you really want to review the behavior plans. All students that have behavior plans, you really want to make sure that any reinforcers that are mentioned within the IEP, within the behavior plan, are accessible. Make sure that you have any reinforcers or motivators that are indicated as needing to be used. So you also want to make sure you have a visual representation of each to be used, for instance, for an I am working for board, or a first do this, then get that. So you want to make sure you have a visual representation, whether it's a photograph, a board maker picture, a drawing, etc. And then as we stated in the slide, the previous slide, to create the data sheets to go along with the behavior plans. And really assure that anything that's in the IEP that's required for the student's day is available. So anything they mention, whether it's communication device, picture symbols, schedule boards, color coding, you want to make sure you have that available. So let's start with actually talking about setting up the physical structure of your classroom. So a couple of important things are you want to have different areas. You want to make sure you have individual workspaces, one-on-one areas, and group workspaces. So for your individual workstations, those are, I usually go with the TEACH model, the structured teaching method. I included a link that has some good descriptions of what that is, but I'll also show some photographs here in a little bit. One-on-one work areas would be when one staff is working with one student, so areas where that can take place. And then some group space for like small group activities. It's also important to have a sensory area, somewhere in your room where your student can access sensory items. We'll also talk about that as well. So then you want to label everything. So when I say label everything, you want to create a print-enriched environment. So that doesn't just mean label it and call it a day. When things are labeled in your room with a word and a visual symbol, you want to reference them throughout. So let's say your computer is labeled with the word computer and a visual of computer. When you're talking about the computer, you're going to reference or point to it, that way bringing meaning to the print. Okay? The sensory room, so you want to make sure you have a specific space that has sensory equipment or activities to benefit the sensory processing deficits that your students might have. So this area can help with calming or stimulating an individual's sensory systems, whatever they might require specifically. The hope, obviously, is that the child will go to that area prior to getting dysregulated. Obviously, that takes some time with getting to know your students and reading your students and helping them to determine when they require such supports. So let's talk again about those visual boundaries. So I like to call it physical visual boundaries. So this is how you're going to segment your spaces. This is going to help provide information to your students in what is expected of them in what area, where the area begins, where the area ends. It gives you a clear definition of where each area begins and ends. Also, many of these components can help reduce noise or movement. So some of them, you can use carpet squares, bookshelves, bookcases. You can read some of these here. Display boards, we're going to talk about how to make your own. Study carrels, room dividers, curtains. I know that sounds funny, but I used a shower curtain once. I had 2 file cabinets with a shower rod and a shower curtain, and it said shower of thoughts, and a student used that when they needed to have undistracted time, and they would go and do their work on the other side and kind of pull the curtain or the shower curtain shut. Tape on the floor. Tape on the floor is an awesome method for segmenting space. I like to call that the magic of tape. So the magic of tape. Let me give you an example. So I had a friend, Garrison, first grade, had autism, was in PE class, and he was running all over the room. And I remember all the other students were in their nice little exercise lines. And I said to the gym teacher, why isn't Garrison in a line? And he did the, we're just happy he's here. And I'm like, no, he can participate in more. He just needs to know what his visual boundaries are. So I got some tape, and I taped off a box just like this picture on the floor, brought Garrison over and said, Garrison, this is your exercise space. And the only difference was he's so literal that he didn't want his feet to go outside of the space, which was kind of funny. So we had to make the box bigger. But the great part of the story is I came to visit him months later, and the PE teacher actually had a roll of tape on his arm. And he's like, oh, this stuff is magic. Whenever we want him to do something, we just tape it out. So it's a great, great method, and I'll show some pictures of it being used within the classroom. Here's how some colored tape was used in a library, in a library to color code the types of books. I'm gonna go forward one to show you there was a key that went with it. So that, I'm going to go back. So the students could know exactly where the books belonged. They were color coded by fiction, biography, etc. So it's a great way to color code, to draw attention to certain areas, and for children to have ease for organization. So there's the code again. This is a picture of a classroom from Esperanza School in Chicago, and they did a lovely job. A couple of things I want to point out here. So this would be the workstation. This would be like the teach model that I talked about. And if you notice here a couple of things. One is they actually screwed the shelving down to the ground. Love that. And then do you see the taped line? That is the workspace. So the child, you might have those students that need to like get up and move, right? But they still are within this workspace. So they can get up and walk around that little area or stand and sit and stand and sit as long as they're in their workspace. So this model of a workstation I love because it has shelving on the left. That's where you would get your work. You would do it at your desk, and then you'd put the completed or finished items to your right. That's the structured teaching model. Here is another picture from Esperanza School. Another great, now this would be more of the one-on-one workstation. So a student can sit, and then the instructor can sit next to them and do one-on-one instruction. I want you to notice again, the shelving is nailed right down to the ground. The shelving is also used to block out distractions. It's kind of a little work cubby. It's a wonderful, wonderful example of a structured teaching section. Here's another area, actually Esperanza again. They also use color-coded tape. So if you see the blue tape and then there's a blue picture on the little black shelf, that correlates with their picture schedule. So I think it might say circle time or workstation. So they'll know that that blue correlates with the picture blue, which correlates then with the blue picture in their schedule. And then you see the station right next to it is red. So it really helps with visually segmenting the areas. Here's some more examples. Now this teacher used just cardboard boxes to segment the areas of their workstations. And inexpensive, but it worked. It worked for these children to do their individual work. Also on the right, you can do on the top, there's some, you can buy some inexpensive carols. And then on the bottom, you'll notice they're using just some tag board to segment the space, but they also are using some colored tape. So nice way of segmenting the area. This room, I think this might be McPherson in Chicago, this has a lot of great use of visual segmentation of space and workstations. So if you notice on the left, we have our display boards, which the next slide we're going to talk about how to make your own at a low cost. Also the bookshelves on the left are used to block out areas and segment space. There's also the little individual workstations. So you have your plastic clear 3-drawer systems for the work. First do number 1. Then when you're done, you complete it and put it in the crate on your right. And then you do work sample number 2, finish, put in the crate on your right. So a great example of some individual workstations. Let's talk about the display boards. Let's talk about how we can make our own inexpensive. So the one on the left, I put a link on actually how to make that one. It's PVC piping and then fabric. Now the only difference is I would recommend the fabric you use is Tempo Loop material. This material allows Velcro to stick to it. So then you have multi-use for your room dividers because you can also put visuals up, visual pictures, visual schedules, etc. The great thing about this PVC pipe is it is lightweight. You can move it around quickly. It also, if it gets knocked over by a student, it is not going to hurt anyone. I also recommend that when you use your Tempo Loop material, you sew it like a pillowcase, slightly tight, and pull it over the top. And then, so that is an excellent, inexpensive way to make a room divider. You also see in the middle, there's that kind of fold-up divider thing. You can do lots of different things with that. Again, lightweight, you can move it around easily, but you can also do things to make it, more useful by you can put Tempo Loop material, you can put pockets, so you can make it really user-friendly. Okay, and simple to move around when you need to keep a child from being distracted by something else going on in the room. This is another structured work system. Notice that there is the shelving on the left to get your work items, and then the finished bin is the laundry basket on the right. We also have a lot of visual supports in there as well. I use this picture to show that there is a lot of color coding to help this child with their organization. The notebooks, this is a green notebook, they have orange, purple, red, and they're all, so anything writing is green. So the child knows that all the writing supports are kept in the green folder. And on their schedule, writing is green. So lots of visual supports here, but I also want you to notice that in the back, it's blue and yellow. You can see that behind his desk. That's just a gym mat. What a great way to make a divider. A, it's safe, again, if it falls over. It's a mat. And B, you can simply move it wherever you need it to be used. And then on the right of his desk is a file cabinet. Great use of items to, block off distractions and to visually segment his area. This is some visuals at a classroom door. So these would be all the reasons why the child would maybe leave the classroom. So once they leave, they would put their picture on where they're going. So it's a nice way for children to communicate where they're going when they leave or even when they come in. Now these next two slides aren't visual structures per se, but they're just kind of tricks of the trade that you might want to consider. Let me get to the slide here. Why did it not go? It's not wanting to go to the next slide. Let me see. For some reason it is. There we go. Oh, now I'll go jump to. There we go. So this one is kind of little tricks of the trade. Some of these you might be able to do in your school. Some of them you may not without administrative, approval. It's often said that painting your environment a muted color works well with children with autism. Limiting the amount of visual clutter, huge with children with autism. So, sometimes it's hard if you're in an inclusive setting. You want to put up work and display work, but sometimes in a room with all children with autism, that might be too visually cluttering. It might be too distracting. You might really want to consider how much you put up and that the visuals actually mean something to their educational process during the day. And then anything that they can't be using at the moment, you might have to cover by placing a sheet or a curtain or paper over it, whether it be the computers or shelving that has some, really inviting activities on it. When you're not using it, cover it up, store things that aren't being used. So the PA systems, this kind of depends on your school, how old it is, what you're working with. I know some of the schools in Chicago were really, really old, so the older PA systems didn't have we weren't able to control the volume. So we came up with ways to mute the sound. You can put clear contact paper over the PA system within the classroom itself, which helps mute the sound. You can also make kind of with like some foam, may not look so pretty, but covered up with some foam, which also can help mute that sound a little bit. In some of the newer schools, you have the option of lowering the volume. Also, some of the newer schools might have chimes or bells or music, which is really great. Headphones are awesome to have some available. When you're setting up your classroom, I recommend having some headphones available in case you have students that have very sensitive, are very sensitive to auditory. The ones that seem to be very successful are those old school. They're kind of bluish. You plug them into you're in the library and you plug them into, everyone listens to like a book on tape kind of thing. Those are awesome because they kind of cup your ear and they give a nice calming feel. But there are other kind of earplugs, music earplugs, shooter earplugs. But any kind of earplugs or headphones are good to have access to in your room. Okay? These are some other kind of, tricks of the trade. You want to make sure, it might sound funny, but make sure the desk is the correct size and the chair is the correct size. Too often our students, they wouldn't maybe have the skill or the words or be able to find the words to say, my knees are touching the top of the chair. So just always make sure, and the OTs will love us and the PTs if we do this, making sure that the child has the 90-degree angle at the waist, the 90-degree angle at the legs, and that the feet are flat on the ground. Up in the right-hand corner, that's a little like cheap way to do it if you don't have like a footstool, or if the chairs are too big, phone books with tape. Also, some variety of seating cushions. If you can have some available in your room, some of the sit and moves, you can usually ask your OTs about those. But if you're on a low budget, go to the dollar store, get a beach ball, blow it up only halfway or a little bit, put it on a chair, and it gives the child that movement. The whole idea for those is that the child feels like they can move without getting up and move. Another way to do that is the tennis balls cut open, put them on opposite legs. So if you're going to put it in the front right, put it in the back left. So the chair gives a rock without them tilting it backwards, but it gives them that movement. Another great thing, if you can have accessible, is a TheraBand or even a bungee cord. Put that around the leg of your chairs. You can do so many different things with that. A child can put their feet on top of it and give it that bounce. So the child, again, they're getting that movement they might be desiring without up and moving. They can put their feet behind the band and pull forward, almost like they're in the gym doing a leg press. But it's going to give them that proprioceptive awareness. It's going to give them the joint compressions. And it can be very successful with a lot of kids. So a lot of this stuff, if these are new kids, it's just great to have accessible to try. All righty. Schedules. Schedules are really, really important to help make the day successful. You want the child to be able to have a predictable day based on their schedule. Anticipate what's going to happen next. This helps reduce anxiety, which therefore helps reduce behaviors. It also, increases their understanding of what's going on and what words and pictures mean, right? What they're there for and identifying what they mean. It also can motivate a child. It can motivate a child to complete a less motivating activity to get to a more motivating activity. So if you're new with the students, you might have to create their schedules with a lot more motivating activities just to kind of gauge how much work they'll do before they need a reward. And you can just embed those right into the schedule. Schedules, they really increase independence. That's the goal, right? I mean, how many of you and I right now today have a schedule, whether it's in your cell phone, whether it's on your Outlook calendar, your Google calendar, and we'd be lost without it, right? So we think of it that way. We think of, I couldn't be independent if I didn't have those schedules because I'd have to call my boss every day and say, what time's the meeting? When am I supposed to be there? Where's it at? So we have to think about it that way. Schedules also help with sequencing, first, then, next, numbers, adding, lots of skills you can learn from schedules. It gives them the confidence and comfortable to be, to work throughout their day. And it really, really helps with transitions. Here's a little site you can go to about an article about schedules. If anyone ever is questioning why schedules, they can check that out. Let's talk about how we're going to make the schedules at your classroom. So the first thing I always do is I take my day, divide it up into segments. So based on amount of time, right, needed for each subject. Then I give each segment a name. Typically that's easy. It's going to be the subject name, but sometimes you have names that might, depending on their age, might be kind of a cute name or whatever. But then you want to represent each somehow, whether it's with a picture, a word, a line drawing, a photograph, but each one needs to have some representation in addition to the printed word. Then we have to select a format, and what I mean by that is, are we going to use a group schedule or individual schedules or both? I often lean towards both. You have your big classroom schedule up on the board, but then each child has an individual schedule. We know with all the therapy sessions and inclusive opportunities our students have, that typically it makes sense that they each have their own individual one because they should each look slightly different. Select where or how they're displayed, meaning are all students' schedules going to be posted on the wall and they go up to them? Are they going to be something that they carry, something that the teacher carries? Are they a piece of paper that they check off, cross off, circle, etc.? And who does that, student versus teacher? Really, really important for schedules. There's got to be a way for the child to indicate finished. Finished is a really important component. I don't know about you guys, but on my list of things to do, I love to cross it off, and then I love to look at my list and go, oh yeah, look at everything I crossed off today. So not only is it that a feeling of accomplishment, but it lets you know you're done, you can move on, what's next, I've completed it, it's over, no more, let's go. So we have to think, how are we going to indicate finished? Do you want it to be you turn the picture over? So let's say the picture says reading. When you're done with reading, you turn it over. Or do you take it off? Is it Velcro? Do you take it off and put it in the finished bin? Or is it paper and you cross it off? You check it off. So you have to figure out how your students or each individual student is going to indicate finished. Super important. Schedules are not crutches. Do not work on weaning them off. I want you all to think about a schedule as something necessary and important, but just make it more sophisticated and age appropriate as the child gets older. Just like I explained about you and I, we all have schedules, and I don't walk around with a picture schedule. Mine's more age appropriate, maybe not much, but so you get what I'm saying. Like, it's very important. I can't tell you how many times I walked into a classroom and I would say, hey, what a shiny schedule. And they're like, oh, he doesn't need it anymore. He knows his day. Well, it's not just to know his day. It's to prevent the anxiety. It's to help with the transition. It's to help for him to process his mind and body to get from one activity to the next. So it's vitally important. So checking your schedule is also important. At the beginning, when students are young, I always recommend some kind of a symbol to use to hand to your students to have them to check their schedule. These are just some samples. I've had teachers use any of these. Eventually, independent, and they just check it because they're done with an activity. So you don't want them to be totally prompt dependent, but you also don't want to always have to say, check your schedule, check your schedule. So at the beginning, you might verbally say, check your schedule, and then hand them a symbol. And then you're going to wean off the verbal, check your schedule. And then you're going to wean off the picture and just hope that once an activity is completed, they know to go to their schedule. So this is a huge one that I truly believe in, the philosophy of no, not today, canceled, it's not a choice today. And the reason why this is so important to me is this. Our students are so smart. If the music teacher is sick and therefore you take music off the schedule, the student is going to be like, what? That teacher is so dumb. I have music today. And they are going to be perseverating off of it and really they know they have music. So I would recommend you put the universal no sign on it because we have to teach change, right? So let's teach change. Here's how I recommend to do it. Beyond putting this universal sign over music, I'm just going to use that one as an example, right? I also, at the top of the schedule, I am going to somehow indicate that there is a change in your schedule with something, a question mark, a lightning bolt. Somehow I'm going to be like, deet, 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 hello, changing your schedule, check it out, and teach the children to scan down their schedule until they get to the universal no. And what I also like to do is I like to then, at the beginning, because remember, we're teaching change, I like to place something they really, really, really like right after the no music. So let's say they really like computer. So you've got your lightning bolt at the beginning of the day, right? They look at it and they're like, what? No way, there's a change. Then you scan down and you go, oh my gosh, I love music. No, you can't take music off the schedule. But then you say, but look what we're doing. And you could just put in a little 5-minute computer time just to help the child to get over the red no universal symbol. So that's my advice on teaching no and teaching change. It might take a long time. It might be very, very difficult, but it's definitely worth a try because as we know in the world of education, that things change actually in the real world, right? Let's see. Okay, so now I'm just going to have, I'm sorry. You know what? I am going to read a question that someone asked. They want to know how often would I refer students to check their schedule at the completion of each activity, after the completion of each scheduled activity. And again, you'd hope that that would be natural. That's the process, is to teach them to just check it when they're done. Because otherwise, what are they going to do? So then it's like, check your schedule. You tell me what's next. Go check your schedule. Okay, so I just show some pictures. This was like in a store that was closing. These were a bunch of those display where you could put pamphlets in. Well, I got like 50 cents for each of them. I bought 8. I had 8 students. I put them on my desk. Every morning they came in. They had to put the day of the week and match their picture schedule up to the main one that was on the board. And then every time they completed an activity, like math was first, they'd take it off and put it in a little bin. They thought it was, it kind of had the cool factor, right? So they loved it, which made them more motivated to use it. These schedules were taking the word, moving it from the right to the left. So if it was on the left, that means they were completed with it. This is just an example of showing color-coded. So like Mary's might be red, or Mary's might be blue, John's is green, and Susie's is yellow. So just to show that if you can color coordinate everything that students have, especially those young ones, it'll really help them with getting through their day, finding their materials, etc. This is a paper one. Now, I have to tell you there's things about this one I really like, and there's things about it I'm like, eh. So let me tell you what those are. I love the fact that my reward is embedded into the schedule. See how it's in there right after math and right after PE. Love, love, love that. I also love the fact that on the bottom right it says I am working for, and it's blank. That means at the beginning of the day, the teacher is going to work with the student to pick what they're working for that day. And then they write it right in there. Love that they have some ownership in what they're working for, because we all know our paychecks might change, our students' paychecks might change from day to day. What I'm a little concerned about is the no calling other names, no making silly faces. I typically like to keep things on the positive note. However, I don't know this student that it was used for, and every student is different, and maybe the student really needed it to say that for them to actually, not do those things. So completely okay with that. This schedule was, there's 2 boxes. So the one box was an X the student would do when they're finished, and then the second box was for the teacher to do a stamp, either a smile or a sad, or the student to self-monitor as well. Okay, this was a schedule that the teacher gave points to, and at the end of the day, they tally their points. These children were a little bit older, a lot more, for lack of a better word, high functioning, and were able to wait until the end of the day to cash their points in. Let's see, younger group, all on one board. They had to go actually check their schedule, bring their picture schedule to their activity. When they were done, brought it back, put it in the finished envelope at the bottom, and took their next picture. They also had a photograph of them on the board too, which helped them with being able to determine which schedule was theirs, and they were color-coded. This is at one of our Chicago public schools as well. This is a great school, Stockton. Now Courtney. Okay, so this is an example of the fact that not all students can benefit or can have an entire schedule. So we also have to think about how much is too much. If I give a student a whole schedule of their day and they can't stand math and it's in the afternoon, they might be perseverating over that all day. So you might just have to do the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 to get them through the day. So this is just a sample of this child could only have 3, and they had the, on top of these numbers were Velcroed 3 parts of their day. This was a child that was included in Gen Ed, so, you know, hey, I'm walking around with a white binder. Don't look too different, right? And the activity that he was in or going to, he would put on the right. So we knew if he's walking down the hall with this binder, he is going to gym. The great thing about the binder then is everything he needs as far as supports were concerned were in the binder. So I loved that. This is going to age myself a little bit here. This was my first schedule I ever created in 1990. Yep, that's right. I was teaching when I was 4. Just kidding. So the reason I put this in here is I wanted to show that some students might need a concrete object. So I took plastic Ziploc baggies, taped them up at the end, and put a little rope on it to like hang on their chair, hang on a wheelchair, hang on a hook. But each activity had something to represent it that was more concrete and object. I just like this company for great resources for ways to display or hold schedules, so check it out. Just a classroom schedule. I'm going to zoom through a couple of these here. It'll be in your PDF, so remember that. You can view all these. Okay, nice use of words and pictures. I want to kind of talk about how this, when you look at it, you see words and then a little picture. Typically, I start when the children are younger with picture big, word underneath it. As the children are getting to learn words and understand and read, I go with word big, picture little on the side, like this one. So it's a great example of that. Love this. Mini schedule, super important. This is really good for parts of the day where a child might break down, where it's confusing to understand. There's a lot going on. So this is a great example. Locker time could be quite stressful for a child. So guess what? Open up the locker and boom. Here's my little mini schedule. So you can use little mini schedules throughout the day of different activities that they might break down during, or that basically need a little task analysis, right? I also put this schedule in to remind us the importance of schedules everywhere. So too often we forget, we're figuring out and using this magic at school, right? We've got to share this with parents so that they can use this at home, so that there's carryover also from school to home. So help parents out, ask them what their routine is, create a schedule for them at home. Another really important place, on the bus. So I just recently worked with a family with a child with autism who was really challenged with the New Year's bus route, a lot longer, different route, different people on the route. So what I recommended is to have, I'm just going to make up these names, but a little schedule that says Mary's house, John's house, Susie's house, then my house, and then grandma and computer. Because that was his reinforcer when he got home. He gets to see he goes to grandma's and he gets to use his computer. So think about how much that would help him to get home. Like he then knows, oh, okay, 3 more stops. I can do this because I'm getting grandma on the computer. 2 more stops, 2 more houses. So it's really important to think of all the environments they're in and how we can help those environments visually. Okay, who else needs a schedule? Every paraprofessional in your room and you, for multiple reasons. You have a hectic day in front of you. You are juggling communication devices, communication systems, data, reinforcers, students at multiple levels. So it's so important that everybody has a schedule. It holds you accountable. It helps you to get through your day. And what's great is you put in these schedules. Well, here, I actually included it. So you want to put in the schedules what students are with what adult throughout the day. Okay, so you also want to put in the actual subject that's taking place and then when the data is taking place. Because if you just say, even to yourself, oh yeah, I have to take data on math, adding single-digit numbers with these 3 students. Yeah, guess what? 3 weeks are going to pass and you're going to go, oh my gosh, I haven't taken any data on that. I hope you have a worksheet. So instead, you embed it into your schedule on when you're going to take the data. You embed it in each paraprofessional's schedule as well. And also make sure you put those staff breaks in, and then when they're on break, who's responsible for those students while they're on break. So really important that everyone has a schedule. It helps immensely with your day. So let's do a little review here, all right? So IEP review, important. Behavior plan review, super important. Ensure that everything that they mention in the IEP and the behavior plan, you actually have access to. I mean, if they say that the reinforcement system is a koosh ball, and you don't have a koosh ball in your room, you need to knock on the administrator's door and say, I need a koosh ball, because you really want to make sure that on day 1 you have everything required to implement the IEP and the behavior plan with fidelity. You also want to make sure that all of these data sheets they're created. They're created so they're done, right? They're ready to go. You have multiple copies. Data is a hard thing to do, so don't make it harder for yourself. Create those data sheets right off the bat. And then setting up that physical environment. Really make sure it's structured, it's segmented, it's color-coded, it's labeled. And then off to creating those schedules. Those schedules are going to be really important for you to run a smooth day. And you know what? A lot of this stuff, it's going to be tweaked. You're going to get to know your students. You're going to tweak it as it goes. You might find out week 2, week 3, week 4, oh, these 2 students don't work well together. We're going to try these 2 students together, or vice versa. So know that you're learning about your students, and it's okay to make changes. It's good to make changes. And it's good to ask for help and support. Any of your therapists that are on the IEPs, speech, OT, PT, social work, collaborate with them, gen ed teachers, and do things together. It takes a village, right? So it's just really a team effort, and I really just encourage you to work with your team, work with your paraprofessionals. They're going to be vitally important to the success of your group, your classes. And then, of course, you want to determine your curriculum that you're using or how you're going to modify your instructional materials. So if you're lucky, you might have, for instance, unique curriculum. That is a curriculum tied to the Common Core that's already significantly modified in 3 different levels. Now, if you don't have that, you're going to have to, up front, take a lot of time, but then once it's done, which is great. So what you're going to have to do is take the curriculum that your school is using and significantly modify it. And, you might have to modify it just like Unique does at various different levels. You might have to have high, medium, low, for lack of better words, or a 1, 2, 3 group. So that would be a whole nother PD, is how to modify instructional materials. It's an important PD, but we can't do it in 2 minutes. And then lastly, I just want to give you some resources here. I have a wiki space that has a ton of just free resources, other professional developments that I've provided. I also have a Twitter Pinterest. You guys use Pinterest. I highly recommend it, except for give yourself a little timer because it can be a little addicting. So if you follow me on Pinterest right now, I have some autism, some vocational, and then just some cool stuff. But most importantly, the autism. But it's so great. You can just search things that you need and that you're thinking about. And you can, for instance, schedules. Do a search on Pinterest of schedules. And then some of them bring you to websites. Some of them are just people's photographs of really cool schedules that they use or they've made. So that's a great one. Now at the bottom, it's a live binder. It's I created this with a colleague, Beth Poss and I, and it's a lot of just free resources as well, lots of links to cloud technology and free resources. So anyways, I wanted to leave some time for some questions. If anybody has any questions at all, I am now looking at the book. So let me see. If you could show again the slide that shows the link about making schedules. Yes, I will show you that. And remember, you're going to get this as a PDF. Sorry if I'm going too fast. Close your eyes so you don't get a headache. But yes, so I would say this is more like a link about, oops, why is it not going there? There it is. It's how, but it's also why, because sometimes we have to explain to others like why we're using schedules, so this is like an article that will help you with that. Another question says, what are some things students could work towards for a reward that are realistic? Ooh, this is an awesome question. I do like a whole hour about reinforcers. You have to go outside of the box. I create my own reinforcement inventories. I actually have it posted on my wiki. It literally says, what does the child like to look at, smell, spin, touch, listen to? All kinds of things that you and I would never be like, oh my gosh, this is it. So give that to a parent, to a sibling, to last year's teacher, to the bus driver, and really find out what are those powerful reinforcers. What is this child going to work for? And let me tell you, when I say ask everyone, I mean ask everyone. I had a student that was so difficult. David, couldn't figure him out, couldn't crack him. I was so young teacher, and I was like, oh, he doesn't like anything. Mom said he doesn't like anything. One day the lunchroom teacher or lunchroom lady came in with a sleeve of styrofoam trays in a plastic, and I thought to myself, lady, I do more than art projects in here. She goes, oh no, they're not for you, they're for David. I said, what do you mean they're for David? David loves these. She said every day at lunch, he goes to the lunch line, gets his lunch on his tray, sits down, dumps his lunch out, and puts the tray under his arm. I was like, huh. So for the next year, whether it matched my outfit or not, I wore a sign around my neck that said, first work, then, and it was a picture of him holding a tray under his arm. Let me tell you something, it was magic. That boy, the things he would do just to get a lunch tray to stick under his arm, I know, right? What was it about that? I don't know, but he loved it. I would have never, ever known that if it weren't for the lunchroom lady. So just ask everyone, observe the child, what they go towards, what they seem to like, and just ask people in their lives. It says, will this be available for a review? Yes, you're going to get a PDF of this emailed to you. Oh, sorry, someone already answered that. Any other questions? I'm going to go back to the end slide with my contact info. Actually, let me go back. Let me go to this slide, which I never showed anyone. There's one more slide. Thank you, AbleNet. I definitely want to thank AbleNet because they are bringing these awesome free webinars to you guys. Oh, did I just call myself awesome? I'm sorry. What I mean is they bring webinars to you guys for free, which is awesome. So I hope you take advantage of them. There's a lot of different ones out here, and and there's a lot of variety. So definitely take advantage of what AbleNet has to offer, because it's remarkable that they're able to offer such a variety of free webinars. There's another question. It says, do you have a specific resource you recommend for reinforcement ideas? I don't, because so many students are so different. For instance, Styrofoam lunch trays would have never been on a recommendation. So it's really just kind of tapping into your students and observing them, and maybe bringing a box of stuff to class someday and just kind of letting them play with it and see what they gravitate to. Someone else has a question. I use a picture schedule for my 3, 4, and 5-year-old students with autism. I laminate them, however the young children chew them. What can we use to hold the pictures together? Also, where can I find data collection sample? Okay, so for one, I would recommend some Chewy the necklaces, because maybe if they had something else to chew that would be more appropriate, they wouldn't be chewing the pictures. There's a lot of new ones that are kind of hip and trendy. They're like necklaces that look like legit necklaces or beaded necklaces, but they're actually non-toxic, safe, and they give that oral input that a student might need. Data collection samples, I'm trying to think if I have them on my wiki space. I know there's something called the Behavior Guy. I would Google search him. The Behavior Guy has some great samples. But you know what? I've also Google searched data under Google Images, and there's great, I even have done data autism under Google Images, and you'll find a lot of samples of various different kind of data sheets. Does anyone else have any questions? Well, I have to thank everyone for taking an hour out of their really, really busy day, getting back into the school year, and I wish everyone an awesome school year and good luck. And the students with autism are lucky to have you guys, and it's a hard job, so keep plugging away, okay, everyone? So thanks again, and you have my contact if you have any other questions.